Sports games. They're often kind of unfairly maligned. While these might not have names like Super Turrican or Radical Rex, they were big parts of the release library of the Sega Genesis and even the Super Nintendo. I was a big fan as a kid, and I'm still a big fan of these games today. The SNES Classic came without a true sports game, unless you count Kirby's Dream Course or Super Punch-Out, but if we're talking about counting them, we can't really call them true sports games, can we? So we should rectify that. Here's what I recommend you add if you choose to add games to your SNES Classic Edition. And first, as an honorable mention, Looney Tunes B-Ball. I mentioned Looney Tunes B-Ball before in an earlier video, and so I'm gonna go ahead and plug it here again, although reusing it as part of a top 10 list would feel a little cheap to me, so we'll add it here. This is like NBA Jam, but with fun Looney Tunes characters, and gets a huge recommendation from me for the power-ups, especially the Vegas power-up. It means you're never really out of a game. So first is Tecmo's Super Bowl. Tecmo's Super Bowl is my favorite football game ever made, hard stop. The NES version gets a lot of the hype, but it's really just as good, if not better, on the Super Nintendo. This version doesn't have a dominant player like Bo Jackson, but it does have the cinema scenes and music you'll love, and might actually be a more balanced game than its older brother because of it. Second is Ken Griffey Jr. presents Major League Baseball, and this is my pick for the best baseball game on the Super Nintendo. The game isn't perfectly realistic, but you don't want that anyway, you want it to be fun. It does everything that baseball games had done previously, only it executes them significantly better than had ever been done before, or really has ever been done since. It's got 28 licensed teams, 1 licensed player, and 162 games of summer fun. Number 3 is NBA Live 96, and this one gets my pick for the best simulation-style basketball game on the Super Nintendo. The reason it goes above Live 97 and Live 98 is because it includes a simulated expansion draft for the Toronto Raptors and the Vancouver Grizzlies, so before you can even play a game, you have to draft your players. This lets each season be a little different without the explicit need for trades or a true free agency mode. Definitely check this one out. And number 4 is NHL Stanley Cup. The NHL series was on the SNES and was almost as good here as it was on the Sega Genesis, but some of the later entries actually aren't going to work on that stock SNES emulator, so I hear. So my pick would be to lean into that Mode 7 pseudo 3D glory, and if you only add one hockey game to Super Nintendo Classic, make it this one. Just make sure you're not susceptible to motion sickness first. Number 5 is International Superstar Soccer Deluxe. I'm not a real big soccer guy. I'm probably just too old to really appreciate it now that Americans actually sometimes watch it. But the best of the best on the SNES is usually thought to be this game, so if you like soccer, if you want to add a soccer game, this is definitely my recommendation. Number 6 is NBA Jam Tournament Edition. Even if you've already added Looney Tunes B-Ball, NBA Jam Tournament Edition should still be heavily considered. I'd go with this one over the NCAA-themed College Slam for sure, and the earlier original NBA Jam. There's something about this game that just makes it such a period piece, like you really can't play it without being transported back into the mid-90s. For me, that's worth having 2 similar games. This one just hits differently. Number 7 is American Gladiators. So okay, is this a sports game? I'm going to go ahead and say close enough. American Gladiators definitely gives you some variety that you might not have otherwise had by going with another baseball game or another soccer game. And then events like Powerball and The Wall at least have some similarities to real sports competitions, so I'm going to give this one a nod here for the sake of variety. Number 8 is Madden 96. Madden 96 is probably not the best Madden game on Super Nintendo. I'd go Madden 97 personally, but the word is that the stock emulator on the SNES Classic won't actually play most of the Madden games. So fortunately, Madden 96 is a solid game I've always had a pretty personal connection with. It opts for a top-down viewpoint, provides a good contrast to Tecmo's Super Bowl side view, and allows for trades and created players. It's very complementary to that game, so if you are adding a second football game, it should be this one. Number 9 is NBA All-Star Challenge. So this is an LJN published game, we all know what that means, and it's definitely no masterpiece. If you didn't already add NBA Live or NBA Jam, I wouldn't even give this one a glance. I wouldn't recommend it in that case. But if you did, This game functions as a set of mini games, including one-on-one and horse. That's a good companion piece to the other better basketball games we've already talked about. If you think of it as a minigame mode for those, you will not get your expectations too high, and that's pretty important when you're playing NBA All-Star Challenge. Finally, at number 10, we have Super Tennis. Super Tennis is probably the best SNES tennis game. It provides a good contrast to the basketball and football games we focused on here. So while it's not going to be considered a classic anytime soon, it is a solid game that does everything well and will provide an alternative to another football or baseball game.